The 2026 WNBA draft has come and gone. Raven Johnson goes number 10 for Indiana. They also select Justine Passat. Flau'jae Johnson gets selected to Golden State, then gets traded. And as expected, Flau'jae Johnson, she was just so pumped to be drafted by the Golden State Valkyries. Didn't have to change her colors. Her eyeshadow matched. It was purple. And in the middle of the draft, the Seattle Storm traded the Golden State Valkyries for Flau'jae Johnson, and the Golden State Valkyries got Marta Suarez and a 2028 pick. I can only imagine that Flau'jae was crushed.
Flau'jae Johnson had barely put on the hat before everything changed. One of the biggest names in the entire draft had just heard her name called at number 8. Golden State took her. The moment looked massive. New franchise, big personality, big fan reaction. It felt like the kind of pairing the league could market instantly.
On draft night, what a journey, right? So you're picked by Golden State, and then you're headed to Seattle. I mean, what was the series of emotions that you were experiencing?
Man, it was like, wow, like I just got drafted. Like my name just got called. They played my song when I walked across the stage. I had the interview with Holly, and then as I'm walking back, my agent is like, they traded you to Seattle. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to Seattle. That's where Sue Bird played at, and it was so cool. So it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't anything like I was like, oh my gosh, like no, it was just like I get an opportunity to play in the WNBA. This has been my dream to get my name called at the draft. I was looking good, so it was like
And then, almost as fast as the celebration started, the whole thing flipped. Flau'jae Johnson was traded. That is what made this one of the most shocking moments of the entire WNBA draft. Not just because a top pick got moved, but because of how fast it happened, how unexpected it felt, and how little sense it made to fans in the moment. Golden State selected Flau'jae at number 8, then sent her rights to the Seattle Storm in exchange for the rights to Marta Suarez and a 2028 second-round pick. That is the actual deal, and it immediately became one of the biggest talking points of the night.
I was one with the crowd. I was shocked. Okay, like you literally, when Kathy Engelbert said, hold on guys, we have a trade announcement. And everybody was like, huh? And it was like Flau'jae Johnson is being traded away from the Valkyries, the Golden State Valkyries, to the Seattle Storm. The whole crowd was like murmuring and like oohing and ahhing. It was gas and everybody was clutching their pearls. Like, what? How can that be? I never seen that before. I would watch NBA drafts, NFL drafts, the WNBA drafts. I never can recall a time where there was a trade agreement spoken and broken right then and there. I was like, is this normal? Is this good? Is this bad? What could this mean?
And here is why people reacted so strongly. Flau'jae Johnson was not some fringe first-rounder. She was one of the most visible players in the class. She came into the draft with star power, championship credibility from LSU, a built-in audience, and the kind of presence that can help a franchise on and off the court. WNBA.com called her one of the best guards available in the first round, and Seattle clearly valued her enough to move for her once Golden State made the pick. So when Golden State took her and then moved her almost immediately, fans did what fans always do. They started asking what the Valkyries saw that everyone else did not. Because on the surface, this looked backwards. If you liked Flau'jae enough to take her at 8, why move her? And if you were always planning to move her, why make that selection in the first place? That confusion only grew when details came out showing the trade had reportedly been agreed to before the selection was even made. ESPN reported Valkyries GM Ohima Nianan said the deal with Seattle was in place before Golden State turned in the pick. That changes the story.
The opportunity to add Flau'jae was really exciting and incredible for us. Didn't think that she would be available at that point. We had been in conversations, and so as we got closer to that pick, once it became a reality, just really excited. I think Flau'jae is a really dynamic, talented young player who's going to just impact on both ends of the court. She can score in multiple ways. She's a great defender, gets deflections, steals, going to be out in transition with our group. So we're really excited how she aligns and, helps us this year, but also is going to be a really important piece for us as we're building for the future.
Because this was not Golden State drafting Flau'jae, changing its mind, and panicking. This appears to have been a planned move. And that matters because it means the Valkyries likely viewed Flau'jae less as a player they wanted to build around and more as the asset Seattle most wanted. In other words, Golden State may have been using the board strategically. They saw value in what Seattle was willing to give them, and they decided they preferred that package over keeping Johnson themselves. Still, that explanation did not calm people down, because the return is what made the trade feel so dramatic. Golden State got Marta Suarez, who went 16th overall, plus a 2028 second-round pick. Suarez is not a throw-in. She is a real player. A 6'3" forward from TCU with size, scoring ability, rebounding, and shooting touch. She averaged 17.1 points and 7.4 rebounds in her final season and shot around 37% from three. That is a real profile. Golden State and outside coverage both pointed to her fit, size, and competitiveness as reasons the Valkyries liked her. But fans do not usually react to a trade by saying, that is a sensible long-term value play. They react to names. And Flau'jae Johnson is a name. That is why this trade felt bigger than the paper value of the deal. You are talking about a player with national recognition, a huge college platform, crossover appeal, and the kind of energy expansion teams usually love. So when Golden State moved her for a later first-turn player rights swap and a future second, the reaction was immediate. Why pass on the bigger spotlight? Why pass on the bigger ceiling? Why pass on a player that many viewers assumed was a perfect face of the franchise type fit? And then there is the Seattle side of this. Because if Golden State's move felt confusing, Seattle's move felt aggressive. The Storm saw Flau'jae sitting there, found an opening, and went up to get her. ESPN reported Seattle had been looking for a chance to move up, and the team clearly believed Johnson was worth it. That tells you a lot. It tells you Seattle did not see this as just a nice surprise. They saw her as an opportunity, a piece worth striking quickly for. That is why this trade creates two very different narratives at once. For Seattle, it looks like confidence. For Golden State, it looks like a gamble. Now, to be fair to the Valkyries, there is logic here. Expansion teams do not just need star names. They need roster balance, size, flexibility, and players who fit the system they want to build. If Golden State rated Marta Suarez highly, and if they believed the extra future pick mattered, then this may have been less about rejecting Flau'jae and more about building a broader foundation. Reporting around the move suggested salary structure and contract value may also have been part of the wider conversation, even if Golden State did not fully spell that out on the night. But here is the problem with that. When you make a move this surprising, you invite a much higher standard of proof. You have got to be right, because if Flau'jae becomes a star in Seattle, this trade is going to follow Golden State for years. Every big scoring night, every breakout stretch, every viral moment, every time Seattle fans fall in love with her game, people will go right back to draft night and ask why the Valkyries let her go so fast. That is the risk of moving a player this visible, this talented, and this early. And there is another layer here too. The emotional side. Draft night is supposed to be the moment, the celebration, the cap, the photos, the feeling that your next chapter has a clear beginning. For Flau'jae, that beginning moved underneath her almost instantly. People magazine even covered the family reaction and the fast-moving moment around her selection and trade. That is part of why the story hit so hard. It was not just strategic, it was personal. It felt abrupt. So what does this all mean now? For Seattle, it means they got one of the most talked about players in the class and a guard they clearly believe can be part of their future. For Golden State, it means the pressure is now on Marta Suarez and on the front office's evaluation process. They do not just need Suarez to be solid, they need this whole logic chain to hold up over time. Because this was not a quiet trade. This was not a move buried in the second round. This was one of the loudest moments of the night, and that is why people are still talking about it now. Golden State made one of the boldest decisions in the draft. Seattle made one of the sharpest. Flau'jae Johnson walked in as a Valkyrie and walked out headed to the Storm. That is not just a transaction. That is a draft night earthquake.